Hi, this is Polaris Banks. I'm the person crazy enough to make this weird movie. This first piece of music you're listening to is the first cue that Zane and I worked on together for the score. He wanted to set the instrumentation palette for the whole thing before we moved on, and that's why it has everything. The low, moody strings and the strong brass, and even that mystical, magical quality, because I really wanted to bring back the, I guess, supernatural element to the Ninja Turtles that's lacking a lot of their live action interpretations. Because it would be very supernatural in Twilight Zone to meet a sewer mutant. If you look at this shot, Hilaire and I really are not very good skaters. I'm particularly bad. He's actually much better than me. I can't skate at all, and that's why I just kind of slide in stiffly. This character I play, Sid, he really is a character from the comics. He's just not very popular at all. No one's ever heard of him. I actually never even read an issue that he appears in when I wrote the script. I just knew that Casey had a cousin, Sid, that he mentioned in one issue, and I thought, it'd be clever to fill out his character and put him in the movie. And then after I was done with the script, I found out he actually did have some appearances in the comics, and out of sheer coincidence, he was a villain. He tried to steal the family gold or something like that, and he did become a foot ninja in the second issue, so that was, again, just a really lucky accident that it worked out that way. That actor there playing the hockey coach is Hilarion and I's dad. That's Bobby Banks. And there was more to the scene originally, but we had to cut it down because we ran out of time at the location. Casey originally ended the scene by punching the hockey coach out, and then the coach slides into the goal, but it was pretty ridiculous, and I'm glad we cut it. Really, when you're making a movie, you're collaborating with fate more than anything, because sometimes you have an idea and you don't see how bad it is, and the powers that be step in and make sure you don't even get to shoot it, because then you'll be, compelled maybe to use it, and I'm really glad we didn't put it in the film. It was over the top. Part of the reason I wanted to make this movie is because I thought that Hilarion looked so much like Casey Jones to me. When you're boys growing up, a lot of times, you and your friends will kind of divvy up which hero you identify with. Like, you're Captain America because you're blonde or something, or like our friend looked like Dean Cain, so that made him Superman. And I always thought Hilarion looked like Casey Jones, and I would volunteer him for that. And I don't know, I think it's just his brutish features kind of look, the same as Elias Codius's, his eyebrows, and his thin face is kind of like the characterization they put on the CGI version, TMNT. And he also has some goofy looks that kind of look like some of the drawings I've seen in the comics, so he embodies everything that Casey should be. And he's also got very crooked features, which is great for a guy who loves to fight. You can imagine his nose and all that have moved around a lot in his life. That outfit, by the way, is an homage to the 2003 cartoon that came out. And in that case, he's always wearing a red tank top and some blue athletic pants with a stripe. So I thought I'd throw that in there. There's a lot of little homages. There's almost too many to go through. And Casey usually is drawn much more muscular. But there are several versions where Casey is on the thin side. And I think I like them better, and that's why I was okay with this, because the artistic lines when he holds his bats look better, and they look more formidable in his hands. Whereas when you have a really buff, kind of Hulk Hogan guy holding a bat or a sword or something, it always looks so small and dinky, like a little novelty bat from a Rangers game or something. To me, really what shows Casey's power is his height. He's so much taller than the Turtles and most other villains, and I like that. Hilarion's the tallest character in this film as well. I really liked working with this actress. Her name's Moira Wilson, and the part of Mrs. Jones is the only character we held auditions for, and Moira really nailed it. She also looks just like our mom, so that worked out. The relation is very believable. She's from, I think, New York and Chicago, so her accent is coming from a much more authentic place. Hilaire and I thought we were being ridiculous with these voices in the film, but I live in New York now. I hadn't been until this year. And the people here, they're just like Seinfeld. They're ridiculous and over the top, and we're subtle in comparison in this movie. This scene's supposed to kind of be reminiscent of the kitchen scene in the first live-action film. It has similar kind of pale yellow light and a lot of wood texture to it. And the green apple also fits in with that. This part of the movie is really important because it shows that Casey isn't a 100% bastard the entire time. He's really a vindictive person throughout the whole story. So I wanted to show at least that he is still respectful and tries to help his mother. Because a lot of bad guys are like that, you know. They may be tough, but they still love their mom. This water effect, I didn't know how we were going to do. I just wrote it into the story and just picked a location, not even knowing. But luckily, there was a hose around the corner we could attach to and just spray a nozzle at the ceiling, and water got everywhere, you know. We had to towel it up for an hour. This music cue coming up is one of the more interesting pieces of music in the whole score. The Purple Dragons have definitely a calling card sound that they, every time they appear, it comes with them, and I needed them to have a very signature theme for that reason. And so I had the idea, I wanted them to seem very brutal and primal, like, you know, wandering marauders, like stray animals or something. So I wanted percussion, you know, a lot of tom drums and such. But Zane had the great idea of actually treating them more like a classic gang, like West Side Story or something. So he brought in a lot of jazz elements, and the two of those ideas together made this really interesting, strange theme that they have. You know, the Purple Dragons, they're Casey's villain, you know. The Foot Ninjas and Shredder, that's for Splinter and the Turtles. But Casey's always at odds with the Purple Dragons, so they definitely had to be a huge part of the script. And it looks like we're really ripping off the Warriors, especially with the way they look. But if you read those original Mirage comics, the Purple Dragons are always drawn with these cut-off sleeve jean vests and no shirt underneath. And so I went with that. I was like, okay, let's do that. Every Purple Dragon gets a jean vest now. Why not? This actor playing the leader, Brian Villalobos, he's actually our brother-in-law. His character's kind of a mix of Hun, the leader of the Purple Dragons, and Dragonface from the first appearance of Casey Jones in the new cartoon. And he also looks and acts kind of like Sam Rockwell, the leader of the children's gang in the 1990 live-action film. So Brian would call his character Hun Rockwell. And Allison Casey, our sound designer, really did a great job with this sequence. I even had a music cue planned for that beating, but we cut it just because, you know, it worked so well just with those noises she added for the pipes. And we really did beat him with those pipes too. I mean, they were foam. We molded them, but it still hurts when you get whipped with one of those things. And Hilarion was just covered in welts and bruises when we were done. But it looked good, so, you know, thanks, Hilarion. You know, it's funny, this section here, I've had a few people ask me what was going on. They didn't get the tooth thing at all. And some people really like it, but a few people were confused. It's not something I made up. It's really a procedure you can look up. I think it's a hockey trick. If you get your tooth knocked out, just save the tooth and just wash it off with some milk and wash your mouth out with milk because you don't want to use water. I think it's damaging to the nerve or something. And you just stick it back to where it used to go in your gums and lock it in place with your jaw, and after enough time, the tooth will reset, and you don't have to lose it or get an implant. So remember that next time you get hit with some pipes in the face. Mine's moving kind of funny in this scene, but it actually is authentic. We wanted to recreate what really happens when people get concussions. So Claire and I looked up footage of skateboard accidents and stuff like that where people get trauma to the head. And they really do stumble around like that, you know, and say strange, disoriented things that don't make any sense. And Laren recreated it pretty authentically, but it's almost funny. And, you know, a lot of times you have to tone down reality for audiences because they won't buy what's real. You know, they have this image that Hollywood's put in their head of how people react when they get hurt because they haven't really seen people get hurt. But we decided to go all the way with it, even if it was a bit, you know, strange or even comedic. But we made a lot of bold decisions in this movie. We didn't have to answer to a studio or, you know, try and get our money back for anything, so we were free to experiment. Probably the boldest decision we made in the movie was to go with such stylized dialogue. The reviewers who checked out this movie, some of them said they loved it, but the acting was way off, you know, base, and the performances were completely unbelievable, which I thought was ridiculous. I mean, clearly it is on purpose. That'd be like saying that the Addams Family movies or, you know, Edward Scissorhands is, you know, has unbelievable performances, or that, you know, the dialogue, you know, brother, where art thou, isn't believable. That's clearly intentional, and it's a stylized film with a heightened reality. And in this movie, that comes from the Mirage comics. If you read them, they're very 80s cheesy in what the characters say, but we embraced it. I wanted to be able to take lines from the comics and insert them into the world that we created in this movie, and it to seamlessly pass through. And we did that a few times. And also, the original cartoons from the 80s and the 1990 live action film have definitely some big performances, not only just the turtles, but, Chief Stearns and the cameraman are all very big and but memorable. That's the most important part. They're fun to quote and they leave an impression on you because they are such a different, world. And I like that. And I wanted to definitely be in that same realm as well. Whenever you adapt a comic book, studios are always going to try and make it more generic and, reach a wider audience, make it more realistic like The Dark Knight so that more people will come and see it. And you lose a lot of the style. But in this movie, we didn't have to worry about that. So there's a lot of stuff you aren't going to see in any other version of the Ninja Turtles. Not only the 80s dialogue and the 80s, stylized outfits, but also that it's set in the 80s, which, I love. I wish they would do that again. And, the turtles also with the widened out eyes and the big grin, like the way they were originally drawn. That was fun to do. And the violence as well. You're not going to see that in other versions because it's branded for kids now, but Michelangelo used to bludgeon people with those nunchucks, and Leonardo would stab people with the swords. They use their weapons, but that's probably never going to be in a theatrical release. The score is also much more classic, I guess, in this version, where in the most versions of the Ninja Turtles they try and make it more modern and fun. And Krang's in it. It's got a lot of weird stuff. And I don't even know if I would do all these ridiculous things if I made a Turtle movie that was an official release. But it's fun to get them out of my system. It's fun to see them finally in a film. One of the more interesting ideas that I didn't spell out to the audience, but I hope that they consider, is that Casey Jones, he does start to prepare to be a hero and make a costume after he witnesses the Purple Dragons being so violent. He's like other heroes where they lose a loved one or see how bad the neighborhood's gotten and decide to do something about it. But he also gets beaten up himself and gets a very traumatic wound to his head. So he might also be kind of a Gary Busey kind of person where he was a little eccentric and aggressive, but then after his head wound, he really goes off the deep end. So he may have some brain damage that causes him to act so extremely. And it was interesting to have someone who the audience doesn't know if he's crazy, and maybe Casey doesn't know if he's crazy either. We couldn't do it in this movie because it's too short, but for a feature, it'd be great to have Casey think that maybe he is imagining the Ninja Turtles. Raphael could come in and save him from doing something foolish, and then disappear, and Casey's the only one who saw him. And then Raphael comes back to his window or to his rooftop or something to talk to him once in a while, and Casey starts to think, maybe I imagine this person, he's my imaginary friend, and I need to start taking medication or check myself in somewhere. I've been doing these weird things, and maybe there's something wrong with me. And then later, of course, Casey can meet the rest of the Ninja Turtles and see that April sees them too and realize that he's not going insane, at least in that way. I like these characters like Marv from Sin City or the leader Welcome to Hoxford, who have these visions or hear voices that we don't know are real and they don't know are real. I started making this movie under the assumption that Casey Jones didn't really have an official origin story. Everything I looked up said that it was kind of a mystery, and that's why he was kind of cool. No one knows where he came from. But it seemed obvious enough to me that he was just some guy who lived in a rough neighborhood, wanted to protect it, so he started beating people up with bats. It seemed obvious. But when I was almost done with the movie, I found out that an issue had come out that was publicized as, finally revealing Casey Jones' origin, and I was kind of upset. I didn't think it was going to match up with my movie, and it was going to disappoint fans. And so I tracked it down and I read it, and just out of coincidence, it was almost exactly like my movie, except that Casey Jones had a little brother that did everything. The comic starts out with Casey saving someone's life, and then the guy buys him a beer and asks him how he became a vigilante, and Casey says that he had this younger brother named Davey. And Davey was the star hockey player, and he, wore that goalie mask. And that, his parents loved Davey more, and he was kind of the screw-up. And he was really jealous of his younger brother, and eventually they get in a fight. And Davey beats up Casey and then leaves. And then that night gets killed by a bunch of purple dragons. He's beaten to death. And then that's why Casey puts on the mask and goes out and becomes a vigilante. It starts off as vengeance for his brother, but then at the end of the comic, you find out that Casey made it all up, and that he doesn't have a little brother, and that Davy Jones is just taken, off the top of his head from Davy Jones's locker, the pirate thing, and so I just kind of wrote it off in my head that he just didn't feel comfortable admitting his own past, and that is what really happened. It's just he made up the brother thing because people do that. They say, I have a friend who needs help. Up until this point in the movie, everything's been shot in Dallas, and this shot and everything afterwards is actually in Austin. That's just a coincidence of location scouting. I found better interiors and streets and the skyline, and especially that junkyard. It's a great huge pile of scrap metal. It was all in Dallas. Dallas has really amazing locations that you can come across. But Austin had much better alleyways, and the whole second half of the movie takes place in one alley or another. So as soon as he puts on the mask, he talks different and he moves different, but the whole movie also looks different and is lit different. And I like that we transform as the viewer with him into Casey Jones. I tend to enjoy the second half of the movie more than the first half, but that's not just the fault of the subject matter. I literally filmed the movie in order, so it gets a bit better as it goes on, or less bad as it goes on. And I'd rather do that, though. I'd rather have a strong finish and leave that with the audience than, start off great and then peter off by the end. A lot of people don't realize that, one, because, the main characters are both wearing masks. Everything Michelangelo and Casey says you can't really hear. And also, because we're filming in alleys, every business sticks their air conditioning unit behind the building. So there's just this big loud hum, this over all the production audio. So it all had to be replaced. Every line is dubbed, and every movement they make is refoleyed and put back into the film. It's a very long process. It took months and months. This scene alone took me a whole week just to do all the footsteps and all the incidental noises when they touch things. The nunchucks especially took a very long time. I had to record every chain movement, every swoop. It was a huge undertaking. This is the first scene in the movie that's actually filmed like an action movie. Everything else is, I guess more dramatic with the violence, but this is the first time I wanted to turn Casey suddenly into an action hero and to move and feel differently. It's funny, the blood on the walls, we actually got in a bit of trouble for that. The alley that we're shooting in is behind a landmark theater, which is a federal building. And so we got called by a detective a little while after and charged me with criminal mischief for desecration of a federal building, but it blew over and they dropped the charges. Oh, that's my favorite part of the movie. I guess it is. It's kind of silly, but I just love that bit. There are certain parts in every action movie that really draw you to wanting to make it, whether it's just one very clever situation or one really great action move or face off. And for me, it's this scene. I'd never seen what happens between Casey Jones going out to become a vigilante and meeting the Ninja Turtles for the first time. And so this kind of lost scene was really my motivation for making the whole movie. It's funny. You never know how effective your scene is going to be until you show it to people. And this particular part, the actor playing Dragonface, Brian, his mom was watching it and she started to tear up, he said, because, seeing her son die there on screen. There was even a little boy who, one of the times we showed it in theaters in Austin, he had to be taken out because he started to cry. So his mom, took him out in the hall to calm down because this part freaked him out so much. Which actually was, really exciting for me because you always want your scene to be something that makes people cover their eyes or, they have to leave. It freaks them out so much. There was only one movie that did that for me when I was a kid. It was Jurassic Park. I loved that movie, but that first time the T-Rex comes out during the rainstorm and attacks the cars, I was so freaked out. I walked out for 30 seconds and came back in. I don't tell people that because I'm so embarrassed about it because I love that movie and I saw it 7 more times in theaters. The actor who played Danny, the kid in the first live-action movie, actually, he wrote me an email saying, he saw the movie and he liked the part when he got killed, and I didn't mean for it really to be Danny, but it does look like him. It's somewhat an homage to the look of the gang kids in that movie. That's me body doubling for Hilarion there because he was out of town. And boom, right there when I hit the roof, the ceiling caved in underneath a bit. So if you look on the left of the screen, you see a guy poke his head out right there. Yeah, he came out and told us, that we needed to stop because we were breaking his stuff and he was going to make us pay for it, but he never did, thankfully. But we got it all in the first take, and, I made sure to tell the camera person, we need to get this perfect because they're going to kick us out. This is the only scene in the movie that's taken word for word from the comic book. Everything this carjackers bit is right out of Casey Jones's first appearance ever in Raphael #1. And that's why the dialogue here is very stylized in 80s. It's got the chill out bro and the this guy's loco and of course, Casey's weird monologue on top of the car. It was like a style reference to match the rest of the script too. This actor here with the mohawk, he was a great guy and he had these hilarious tattoos all over him. My favorite was on his arm. He had a dick beating a woman. That's what he called it. It was just a penis drawn with arms that was punching a woman. It was so strange. That right there, when Cruz gets hit in the back of the legs with the bats, I've still had a few people say it looks like they completely miss him and how fake it looks. And we did 30 takes just over and over again to make sure that the bats hit him square in the knees. And people still say it doesn't work, so sometimes the work doesn't pay off. All right, this is the big question that I get asked more than anything about the movie. Everyone wants to know, why did I go with Michelangelo instead of Raphael? And honestly, when I started making the movie, there's been so many versions and so many popular incarnations that I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal, but people really wanted it to be just like the comics where Raphael first meets Casey. And there's a lot of reasons why I did go with Mikey instead. Well, first of all, it's already been done. There are several movies that have Casey meeting Raphael for the first time, and I like them. I think they're great. So why try and do something if you can't top it? Why not just do something else? And that's what was interesting about using Mikey. There's been solo issues with Donatello and Splinter and April and of course Raphael, but I'd never seen anything that was just Casey and Mikey. So that was something new to make that I wanted to see. Plus, they always pass up Mikey for all the good action stuff. They give it to the other turtles because they're the cool ones or whatever, and he's just the stupid, goofy one. But I was thinking that if I'm doing the creepy whited-out eyes and the weird grin from the original drawings, and I'm upping the action and the violence, it'd be a lot more interesting to use the goofy turtle and make him more badass. There's a lot more contrast to that. And they never let Michelangelo use his nunchucks in any of the movies. Even the CG version, if you watch them all, he's never has anything to do. And I wanted to add a lot of great, weapon choreography because he's got the most dazzling weapons of the group, even though they're very hard to use in the gloves, but, Fraser managed. Also, probably the best reason to use Michelangelo is that he's a much better foil for Casey Jones. They're exact opposites. Casey's aggressive and rude, and Michelangelo is funny and easygoing. Their conflict drives the story better. In the original issue, Raphael is in a more peaceful, kind of restrained mood when he meets Casey Jones, but that's just because he had a fight earlier in the lair, and he gets a lecture from Leonardo about being too much of a hothead. So he's acting a little out of character when he meets Casey Jones, but I didn't have that story to kind of introduce him. The turtle just shows up, so it was better to use a naturally kinder turtle. And plus, the actor I got to play Michelangelo he's a good friend of mine named Chris Frazier. He's always been a big Mikey fan, so he was already great with nunchucks, and he knew all of Mikey's mannerisms, so it was much easier just to go with that. That line is one of my favorite references in the movie. It's taken from the Sega Genesis video game Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters, where if you play Casey Jones and you push the C button or something, he opens his arms like that and says, "So long, losers," as his taunt. I tried to do as many of the more dangerous stunts myself because I didn't want to get any of the extras hurt, And so I'd put on the ninja costume and do the running on the ledge, things like that. There's a throw coming up where the turtle tries to chuck a guy over his head, but he can't get his arms all the way. Here it is right here. And I landed on the concrete right on my elbow. 4 times I missed the mattress. It seized up for a month. Oh, that moment with the shell shock, that was the saddest part of recording. I was, working with Robbie Wrist, and I said, could you give me kind of an umph noise for the shell shock? And he said, I don't know what that is. I don't really watch the movies. And it broke my heart. Michelangelo, the real Michelangelo, did not know what a shell shock was. This is another one of the bits of action that really made me excited to make the movie. I was doing some research, trying to watch everything that has Casey Jones in it, and I was checking out some of the cartoons from the 80s. And I think in his first appearance on the show, he pulls out a sledgehammer at the end to fight a spider robot that Krang's riding in. And I thought, oh, that's brilliant. He's got a sledgehammer in his bag. We have to use that against human beings. And I took it to its most extreme and graphic conclusion. One guy who was incredibly valuable during this whole ninja fight was Matthew Lee Willis. That's him doing the backflip right there. I had him play a Purple Dragon earlier, and I found out he can do gymnastics and parkour, and here's him running up the wall right there. I used him over and over again, every shot I could to add some sort of spectacular acrobatic stunt. He was fantastic. Oh, that's me getting beaten up there in the ninja costume. If you look at my right arm, it's frozen in a right angle position. That's from that stunt I was telling you about earlier where I really banged up my elbow on the concrete, and it was stuck like that for a month. You get a much better turnout from your extras if you don't ask for extras, actually. You ask for a specific skill. I said I needed martial artists to do some stunt work, or, parkour or gymnastics or breakdancing, just anything I could use for the stunts. And a lot of people showed up each day, and it was unpaid, but they were excited to do something fun, because stunts are much more fun, and that their skills would be useful. Always ask for people with experience, say, I have a cop scene, I need people with police experience to play these officers, or, earlier in the movie we had the hockey players, and I asked for skilled skaters who really knew what they were doing, and they showed up, and they were very helpful, and people like to be helpful, and they want their skills to come in handy. So don't just ask for extras. That's no fun. I don't want to do that. Nobody wants to do that. Oh, that's me running on the ledge there. It was a straight drop, like 2 stories on the other side. That was the most dangerous thing I've ever done. Probably what I get asked about the second most is anything involving Krang. Everyone wants to know why I put Krang in the movie, or how we made it, or where it came from. And luckily, that thing already existed before I even had the idea to make this movie. The special effects artist who made Casey's mask and the Ninja Turtle costume, his name's Oliver Luke, he made a Krang animatronic in his special effects makeup class. He went to the Savini school, and they did an animatronics unit. And he had that thing just finished in his room. I mean, it still needed the arms in the box, but other than that, it was ready to go. So, I had to use it. I couldn't forgive myself if I didn't use the Krang that was just sitting in the other room in my Turtles movie. And, plus it was another chance to do something that hadn't been done before. And I wanted to have Shredder in the scene too. I thought it'd be cool to have the both of them up there on the roof, but I couldn't justify making a whole Shredder costume just for one shot. It would be so expensive and time consuming. So I looked around to see if anyone had already made one for Halloween or something, but there was nothing good enough. Oh, this shot coming up, this one right here of him swimming in the turtle suit, that's Marty Marino. He played the turtle in some other scenes. And he's actually thrashing around really panicked in this shot to stay afloat because that suit's really heavy and the water was so cold. It was shot in the winter in a creek in Austin. And so he's really fighting for his life not to drown. And I decided to shoot it in 60 frames per second so that it would be in slow motion and he would look like a confident, graceful turtle swimmer. This scene was originally supposed to take place inside the lair, and you were going to see all 4 turtles. And I had a location picked out, and the dialogue was longer. And I was planning on using the same suit, for each character, because I only had one, and just have the actor switch out the colors of his bandanas and the weapons to play different roles, which would have been great, and it was kind of my favorite scene in the whole movie, but it would have been way too taxing on the actors doing it. Anyone in that suit, after 3 different setups, their hands would fill with sweat, and they'd almost pass out from heat exhaustion, so I couldn't do that to somebody, make them keep going. It was so hard to finish the movie as is with these guys in these suits. But I like the way it turned out. It's kind of mysterious just hearing their voices. I have had a few fans say that they liked the movie, but that they hated the turtle suit, and it was so ugly and fake looking. And that really bothers me because that suit cost thousands of dollars to make in just materials. And it was just 3 of us in our apartment making it in the living room, working for free, We didn't have any of the high-tech equipment necessary. We didn't have the big ovens to do foam latex, so we had to do regular latex, and the suit had to last the entire film. And we put it through so much, all these flips and kicks, and we got it wet, and we tore up the hands with the chucks and the feet on the concrete. And so we were constantly repainting and switching out parts. People don't realize in regular creature suit movies that they make dozens of copies so that they can keep it looking good, and it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. That was another fun homage to the first 1990 live-action film. We had Marty play the pizza man, and he's also in the Michelangelo suit half the time. And that's what they did in the original movie. They had the same actor play both characters. He also is wearing a shirt that says Ninja Pizza, home of the nice slice, which is taken from the 80s cartoon. I think that's the first episode. The turtles come across this pizza place that is a front for the foot. So I threw that in there. In this scene, we switch back and forth between real metal bats and some foam ones we made, but I wasn't able to make foam ones for every weapon Casey had, especially the hockey stick and the golf clubs were too thin to make a mold of, so we just used the real thing, and the stuntmen were brave enough to actually do all of that with a real golf club. That symbol there on the wall of Casey's mask, that's just graffiti we put up, with a stencil and some spray paint. It's permanent. And we didn't get permission to do it, but, it is an abandoned building, so that makes it a little better. But we just came the night earlier and tagged it. That was one of the many illegal things we did for this. I like this bit with the jelly bean and whipped cream pizza, but I didn't think anyone was going to get it. It's kind of an obscure reference to the 80s cartoon. They always ordered these exotic pizzas, and in this shot here, I didn't know if you could tell what it was. But we screened it in Austin, and when that part came, there were a lot of people who, kind of went, "Oh, I get it." So I was happy with that. That's Brian Villalobos playing Mikey's arms in the grate here, and I'm Donatello. And what you can't see is that there's sewer, rancid, stagnant water up to our necks, and it was pretty nasty and cold. I even got a staph infection from it. It was, such putrid water, but Brian was fine. So I had to take some antibiotics for that. But we had to deal with a lot of sewer water at the end of this movie. That was probably the grossest part. Man, I really, really love this end credits song. It's more than I hoped for. And it's written by J.J. Brown and Johnny October. J.J.'s the producer, and Johnny did the lyrics and performed it. It's beyond my expectations. I just put out a post asking for someone to make a turtle rap, and they got back to me. And they were the perfect fit. JJ even has some turtle toys still in their packages in his studio, and Johnny October is like a real-life Casey Jones. He's kind of a rough but fun white kid from Brooklyn, and he even wrote it first person, which really worked out. So you guys should definitely check out their other stuff. So I guess the big question is, why did I make this movie? Why did I do it? I didn't make any money off of it, and I definitely lost plenty of money producing it and 3 years of my life picking at it. But I guess I've always wanted to make an adventure, action-y film with creatures and all that, and with characters that I really love, because, the best comes out of you when you're working with something that you love. And rather than spend 10 years of my life asking people for permission to work with these characters and to get their money, I thought, is there any way that I can just do it now? It's not about the money for me, it's about making the movie. And so I just went ahead with it. I didn't actually finish college. I only did 6 months. And then I had a bit left over in my, tuition fund. And so I just kind of spent that learning how to make movies. This was just kind of an educational little project. But you get experience with fan films you don't get doing other movies. There's a lot of kind of goals when you're making a movie for different reasons. You're trying to get it to be nominated for an Oscar. You're going to make it a certain way. If you're trying to get all your money back and you have investors, you're going to make it a different way. And this is great because you're not going to make any money back, but you're going to get a bunch of feedback. You get that connection with an audience that we both love the same thing, and this is something I want to give to all you guys, and I hope you like it. And it's very rewarding, to have people write you back and say that they love Casey Jones and they love your movie. So I hope there's plenty of people like that. I guess what I really learned is that if you care about something 100% and you put in as many hours as you can, it inspires other people to want to work with you. I had great people on this movie, Zane Effendi and Allison Casey, and of course Robbie Riss, these people who were really above the project, but when they see that I'm putting my all into it and I'm spending the extra hours, it's easy for them to help me and to feel good about it. Well, I hope you enjoyed my ramblings if you made it this far. Thank you for your interest in the movie. All right, bye.